Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kathy Sherman is absent, Jeff Guard, Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
and David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
I just mentioned for the record, Kathy's really sick tonight.
Yeah.
She told me she wouldn't be calling in, so.
Thought so.
She's sick. I saw that she was sick, but
And in a late time zone. So work session topic tonight is the City of Cordova fiscal year 2020 financial audit presentation by BDO USA LLC. Vicky?
Should be on the line.
Are you on the line,
Good
Vicky?
evening, everyone.
Okay, you've got the floor.
Video. Oh, I just wanted to make sure everybody could hear me. So I'd like to, first of all, start by thanking everybody at the city for getting us all the information to get the audit done. I know this was a challenging year with the turnover in your finance director position, like it happened during the audit, so it was a little bit challenging to get our work done. But one of the things I'd just like to start off saying is we were actually able to do majority of the work in July and August when we were scheduled to work on the job. This year you are subject to single audit in accordance with uniform guidance for your federal program. And that was one of the areas we could not audit because we didn't have the information necessary to audit when we were in the field. And with your finance director position turnover at the point, we were not able to actually get the information necessary to audit that program until you hired Altman & Rogers, Monica, with Altman & Rogers. And after that, we were finally able to get those populations and we could sample. But at that point, we were already at a situation where I didn't have my crew anymore. They were all on different jobs, and we basically did the rest of the audit on nights and weekends, basically, to finish up. But overall, like, other than that, the part where we had to struggle to finish the audit for the federal program, everything else actually went pretty well. Based on talking with the city manager and everybody over there, as long as you're going to keep the accounting position there with Altman, or as long as that position is there, I don't think we'll have any problems with the audit in the future. But anyway, so that was the first thing I wanted to just start with. But yeah, so once we got all the information, everything we were able to get and we were able to complete, and now I'm doing the presentation. So as part of the presentation, we do have two documents that's here. So one of them is the audit wrap-up document, and the other one is the financial statements itself. I would like to start with the audit wrap-up document. This is the report that's addressed to the City Council. It's called the Audit Wrap-Up Year end December 31st, 2020. Does everybody have that report with them?
It was emailed recently by Susan, probably 2 days ago. So for those of you who want to look that up in your emails, if you haven't seen it, that's the document. It's not in your packet.
I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to just get to the document if you don't have it. Otherwise, just let me know when you're ready and I will get started.
I think you can just go ahead.
Okay. So page 3 of the document, basically the professional standards requires us to communicate with you regarding matters related to audit that in our professional judgment are significant and relevant in your responsibility in overseeing the financial reporting process. And this document has some of those items that we think is important for in your role of overseeing the financial reporting process. I'm going to go to page 5 of the report. Page 5 of the report is the status of the audit. As I said earlier, we completed our audit of the financial statement. And then we also had to do an audit in accordance with government auditing standards and an audit in accordance with uniform guidance because you did get federal funding over $750,000 this year. The first bullet point there, the objective of our audit was to obtain reasonable, not absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements. What that means is we do the audit for 2-3 weeks. We cannot look at everything that's going through your system. So we do our risk assessments and we set a material threshold based on your amounts in the financial statements, and we don't look at everything, but we look at a sample of stuff. And then there's a lot of other items in your financials that are also subject to random sampling. So there's a lot of stuff that actually gets looked at during the audit. So the big important bullet point here, we had issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statement. We also issued an report in accordance with government auditing standards for your internal controls over financial reporting, and we didn't report any findings along those lines. And we also issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on your federal signal audit. And all records and information requested by BDO was freely available for inspection throughout the whole process, and management cooperation was excellent throughout the whole process. Next page, results of our audit. For this year, we didn't apply any new accounting pronouncements on the city's financial statements. The school district did have, actually that's for next fiscal year, I'm sorry. So for the city, there was no new accounting pronouncement that actually affected your financial statements. Your recently issued accounting pronouncements are included in note 15 of the financial statements. And based on our review of the financial statements this year, there were no real significant estimates that management had to make on the financial statements. There are accounting estimates on the financial statements. One of the ones would be your uncollectible accounts. So you do have small allowance for your uncollectible accounts for some of your utilities. The other big estimate that's on the financial statements is your net pension and OPEB liabilities or assets associated with that. But that information is actually obtained from an audit, separate audit that's done at the state level for the state. And then there is an audit of the allocation of the pension liabilities for PERS. And then the other post-retirement health insurance benefit too is audited, and that information is obtained directly from the State of Alaska Division of Retirement Audit, and those are included in your financial statements too. And your financial statements also have a liability related to your landfill post-closure obligation, and that's also included in there. Next page, I'm going to go to page 8, which is the results of the audit on a corrected and uncorrected misstatement. We did have 4 corrected misstatements, but those are items that we actually help the city with. It's related to the pension adjustment that has to be posted for based on the information from the State of Alaska Division of Retirement Audit for the contributions and liability and assets related to PERS. And we help management put that entry, and those were the corrected misstatements. For this year, we did have 1 uncorrected misstatement, but that does not really have any significant impact on your financial statement. There was about an $86,000 amount that was reported as a negative cash, but it should have been reported as accounts receivable for. So there's no real difference on your total assets as a result of that adjustment. And you can see both of those adjustments, those are included in this wrap-up document towards the back. The uncorrected misstatement is included with the representation letter that's attached, and then the corrected misstatements are also included as an attachment to this document. One of the next part is the group audit. One thing to note is your financial information does have your discretely presented component units. So the Cordova School District, Cordova Community Medical Center, and the Cordova Volunteer Fire Department information is included here. We did not audit any of those entities. The City of Cordova, the Cordova City School District and the Medical Center are audited by others, but Cordova Volunteer Fire Department is not currently audited and it's immaterial to the finance statements. Next page, going to page 11, that's internal control over financial reporting. As part of our audit, we just don't go look at your financial numbers. We start by getting an understanding of your internal controls over the financial reporting process. And because you are also subject to an audit in accordance with uniform guidance for your federal programs, we also get an understanding of the internal controls around your compliance requirement that's applicable for the federal program. And as part of that process, if we note any issues, we would actually put it together into one of the three categories defined here: a control deficiency, a significant deficiency, or a material weakness. Material weakness is a deficiency that we consider to be so severe that it could cause a major misstatement in your financial statements. A control deficiency would be any small deficiency that we don't think would cause a major problem in the financials, but it could still be something that could be fixed. And a significant deficiency is something in between. If we deem any of those issues to be a significant deficiency or a material weakness, we'd actually have to have that in writing. And because you are subject to an audit with uniform guidance and government auditing standards, we would actually present those items as findings in the financial statements too. The next page, page 12, has, we did have one significant deficiency related to your internal control over your federal program that we reported. So we just, there is a reporting requirement for the federal program that, that was subject to the audit. As part of any federal compliance requirements, you are required to have controls in place that is actually, that's something we can actually look at, that that provides assurance that the compliance requirements are met. So for your reporting requirement, we saw the report was filed timely, but we couldn't see any evidence of review. So basically the situation is like whenever you have reporting requirements or any expenses that you're charging to grant, there has to be a second level review. So we saw the report being filed, but we just didn't see any evidence of anybody other than the preparer reviewing that report before it was filed. And then we also included some control deficiencies here related to some IT-related issues. We, in the past few years, because of the focus on information technology, and there has been a little more focus on us to go look at IT a little bit more. So this year we did a pretty thorough documentation of your IT requirement, the IT at the city, and we did note few issues. So that's what's listed here. We did note some issues related to past.
Vicki, are you still there? I think we lost you.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. I think my wife came home and my phone connected.
Kids are in the car.
Yay.
It's attached to his car, I bet.
It's okay. We love interruptions.
Sorry. Can you hear that?
Yes, little people are delightful.
I'm back. Yeah, I'm back again. I'm sorry. The phone automatically connects to the car, and I think they turned off the car. Now it shouldn't happen anymore. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. perfect. So yeah, so we will be working with management, and we will get the more detailed information about these control deficiencies to management, and hopefully we can get that fixed for next year. Other additional items, there was no consultation that we are aware of. There were no other significant findings or any issues that came up during the audit. And there were no disagreements with management or any other significant difficulties that we encountered during the audit. So that's all the items that I was going to run through quickly on the audit wrap-up document. Any questions so far? Otherwise, I'm going to go on to the financials and just do a highlight presentation of some of the numbers.
Any questions, council? Okay, I think we're good. Vicki, go ahead and forge on.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the financial statements itself, and I think you have the printed version of the financial statements with you. Since I already talked about the unmodified opinion or clean opinion, I'm going to go to page 6, which is A1 of the financial statements. This is your statement of net position. So this statement of net position is basically your balance sheet. It has all of the assets and deferred outflow of resources, basically everything that you own. The next page is your deferred, yours has the liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, and the difference between that will be your net position. At the end of 2020, your total assets and deferred outflow of resources was almost $102 million. Out of that, $74.8 million was your capital assets, $7.2 million was land and construction in progress, and $14.5 million was cash and investments. So it's a pretty strong balance sheet right there. Next page is your liabilities. Your liabilities at the end of 2020 was $25.3 million. Out of that, about $15 million or so of that was your debts, your bonds and loans payable, and 5.9, almost $6 million is your pension liability. That leaves you with $76 million in net position. Out of that, $65.9 million, almost $66 million is invested in your capital assets, and your unrestricted net position at the end of 2020 was a little bit over $9 million. Out of that, $8.5 million was in your governmental activities, and $471,000 was in your business type activities. So this one, basically this statement shows all of your long-term assets and liabilities, and it includes both your governmental activities and business type activities. So I'm going to go over to to present your governmental statements first, and then a little bit of presentation on your business type activities. So if you go to page 8 of the financial statements, oh, I'm sorry, not page 8, page 10 of the financial statements, that's your governmental balance sheet. So unlike the front statements, the governmental fund financial statements do not include long-term assets and liabilities. So these are presented more on the current resource basis. And this one has all of your governmental funds. So, and it is separated by major and non-major funds. There is a calculation under GASB requirements that has to be done. So if any of the fund meets either 10% of the assets, liabilities, revenue, or expenditures, then they get presented as major funds, and everything else gets presented under the non-major fund bucket. And in the back of the financial statement, in the supplementary information, there are combining schedules that give you more detail on these non-major funds too. Your total assets in your governmental fund balance sheet at the end of 2020 was $13.4 million. Out of that, $10.3 million is your general reserve special revenue fund, and $2.5 million is in the general fund. You had really small amount of liabilities of $349,000 and deferred inflow of resources of $789,000, leaving you with your total fund balance at the end of 2020 of $12.3 million. Out of that $12.3 million, $10.3 is in the general reserve special revenue fund, and $1.5 million is in the general fund. And as you can see, your unassigned or your unrestricted net position at the end of 2020 was about $1.2 million. Next, I'm going to go to page 12. Page 12 is your statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So basically like your income statement. This one shows all of your revenues and support for the year, your expenditures, and the difference between that is your change in fund balance. Your total revenue at the end of 2020 was $15,778,000. Majority of that revenue was in your general fund, $11 million, and this year you did have the CARES Act special revenue fund, and that was almost $3 million. Out of that $15 million, $6.4 million is from taxes, $4.2 million is from the federal government, and $1.9 million is from the state of Alaska. Your expenditures followed your revenue. So you had $14.3 million of expenditures, and with some of your transfers in and out, you ended up with your change in fund balance of $864,000 for 2020. Next statement is your proprietary funds or your enterprise activity, and you'll find this on page 14 and 15. Your statement of net position, you can see your total assets. You'll see the breakdown by the different funds. And same thing as the governmental fund, this is separated by major and non-major funds. So all your major funds are reported separately here. And since you only have one non-major fund, so that's also presented here. And if you wanted detail of all your proprietary funds, it's in these statements. So C1 has the port, water, sewer, refuse, and Odiak Park in there. Your total assets, $35 million. Out of that $35 million, $12 million is in the port. Another $12 million is in water, $7.4 million in sewer, and $3.3 million in refuse. So I am actually going to go all the way to C2, which is on page 16. This statement is your statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in net position. So basically your income statement for your enterprise fund. This one shows all of your revenues, your expenses, and then the difference between all that is your change in net position. Your total charges for service, your total revenue for all your enterprise funds was $4.2 million. Total operating expenses for these funds was $5.4 million, and leaving you with loss from operations of $1.2 million. One thing to keep in mind is this is not really a cash loss. So you can see your depreciation expense for the year was over $2 million. So your loss from operations was 1.2, and a majority of that loss does come from your depreciation of the assets. Your total non-operating expenses and revenue total a negative $290,000, leaving you with a change in net position on your enterprise activities of $1.5 million for the negative $1.5 million for the year. So that's a summary of all the financial statements itself. Now I am gonna move all the way to page 119 of the report, which is the schedule of findings and question costs. Because you are subject to the federal single audit and then a gas audit, so there's this one document that summarizes the result of that. So that's all the way on page 119 of the report. I'll give you a couple of minutes to get there. So yeah, schedule of findings and question costs. This just gives a summary of the audit. So results, the first part is the financial statements. Like I said earlier, an unmodified or a clean opinion, no internal control related issues noted. So there's no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified. For your federal award, we did say that we have one significant deficiency that I did refer to earlier, and that is actually presented as the findings. And then we audited the Coronavirus Relief Fund as a major program for the year. And then the next page itself, page 120, has the actual finding. I've already discussed this earlier. The compliance requirement was actually met. You actually turned in the report on time, but there was no evidence of a second person review of the report before it was filed. So that was what the finding was, and the management has already taken action to correct this finding at this point. So those were the items I was going to touch on the financials. Was there any questions or any other areas of the financials that you wanted me to go over today?
Is there any questions, council? Okay, well, thank you, Vicki. We really appreciate it. And it is a breath of fresh air to see our fund balances and financials. And no council's happy to have these. So
I wish they were 2021s, though.
Speaking of 2021, Vicki, do you want to let them know what our schedule is for the audit for the 2021?
Yeah. So 2021, we're still scheduled similar to prior year, June, July timeframe. And like I was saying earlier, this is 2 years before. I mean, this year we're late, of course. And like I said, I gave you the reason for why we couldn't complete the audit in a timely manner. As long as you have the position filled and all the information can be provided, there should be no problem getting this done before the September 30th timeframe. As I was saying earlier, this year was late, but the last 2 years we were able to get this done timely. And with Monica being there, I'm pretty confident that we should be fine with the audit. And like I was saying, like even for this year's audit, we were actually done with majority of the work during the time that was scheduled. The only issue we ran into is we could not audit the federal program because the population could not be provided. And then for that portion, we had to actually wait for the next person to come in and take over and come up with the population before we could sample. So based on that, I unless there is another COVID-related closure or something happens where you cannot get the information or get the books closed timely or something like that, I don't foresee any issues.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments, council? Hearing none, with no objection, we'll adjourn the public hearing. Or the work session, I guess.
Thank you, Vicki.